county of Pembrokeshire, a land that has lived with history, a land of gentle countryside and sleeping villages, a land that has known the peace of the Christian gospel, spreading far and wide from the settlement at St. David's, and a land that has known the fire of the invader, where castles and ramparts are part of the daily scene. And in the heart of this land, at the foot of the Preseli Hills, whence prehistoric man dragged the mighty bluestone slabs that form the inner ring of Stonehenge over 200 miles to the east, here there rises a tiny stream which bubbles and dances through the fields to become the River Cleddau. And the river grows wider and joins others until the banks grow more distant and higher, and the river becomes an estuary. The banks become cliffs, the waters run wild and deep, and the tiny stream becomes the sea.
Milford Haven is one of the biggest natural harbours in the British Isles and is capable of taking the largest vessels at all states of the tide. It was once a busy fishing and shipbuilding centre, and many of the wooden warships of Nelson's day were built here. But its importance declined with the years, and the Royal Dockyard, around which had grown the township of Pembroke Dock, was finally closed in 1926.
And when the Admiralty works stopped, Pembroke Dock became a dead town. The dockyard had employed hundreds, earning good money in return for skilled work. Then suddenly, there was nothing. No work, no alternative employment, and little hope for the future.
Oh, we had a bit of a spurt during the war years when the RAF had a flying boat base here, and there was some ship repair work going on. But by the end of the 1940s, we were back where we started, living on government charity. We had all sorts of promises about industry coming, but, well, you need a bit more than speeches to live on when you've got one of the highest unemployment figures in the country, don't you?
A person deeply concerned with the situation was Alderman W.J. Gwilliam, twice a mayor of Pembroke and Pembroke Dock, a freeman of the borough and senior alderman of the Pembroke Borough Council.
The people of South Pembrokeshire have always been characterised by a sturdy independence, and they have for many years fought very, very hard for industries to be established here. On numerous occasions, success seemed to be within their grasp, but it always eluded them at the last moment. And of course, as you know, hope deferred maketh the heart sick, and people were rather sceptical of these reports until they saw the thing actually beginning to materialize.
You see men sitting on the sea wall every day, all day, waiting for dole time, getting more demoralized as time goes on. Good men who want work, who will work, and who are entitled to work. It's not a question now of what people want. It's a question of what they bloody well got to have.
Monday, February the 25th, 1963. A bulldozer driven by the Member of Parliament for Pembrokeshire, Mr. Desmond Donnelly, cuts the first turf on the site of a multi-million-pound refinery to be built for the Regent Oil Company on the south shore of Milford Haven, only a few miles from Pembroke. It is a cold day, and the ceremony attracts only a few onlookers. Yet this is the start of the biggest industrial project South Pembrokeshire has ever known. Mr. Donnelly explains.
This is really the decisive development in the beginning of making Milford Haven one of the most important oil ports in the world. It was the crucial capital investment coming on the earlier ones, and as far as South Pembrokeshire was concerned, it represented the rebirth after long years of unemployment and hopelessness. It really was an event of profound importance.
In my opinion, the coming of Regent to the area opens up a new period of industrial development.
Of course, I suppose everybody views with a certain amount of uneasiness this industrial development, but we have been asking for it for generations, and you can't have your cake and eat it.
I think it's going to have a very good effect on Pembroke and Pembroke Dock, in that it is now bringing a measure of employment which was not here hitherto. The difference is you've got to look at this in two ways. Where there was only 2 or 3 men employed on that land, there's hundreds employed now.
Started by moving in all the heavy earth moving equipment, scrapers, levelers and all that. You see, we had to shift the countryside round a bit so the storage tanks wouldn't stick up above the skyline and spoil the view. And that meant moving some 2 million cubic yards of earth and rock. And there's a bloody great chunk of countryside, you know. Of course, some of the people living on the land that was going to be occupied by the refinery, they had to be moved as well. Those people like Mr. and Mrs. Morgan who lived over at East Popton Farm.
That's good land down in Popton there, good farms. Yes, very good farms. Some of the best.
It seemed an awful thought that you're going to have your living just out of your hands.
You think they could have treated us a little bit better than they did? I mean, they got us out on such a short notice, and they took our living from us, and home, everything.
Well, at the time, I was quite sad about it, but it was a wrench. But now it's over, I'm perfectly happy.
Well, as soon as the surveyors had finished plotting everything out, we started driving in piles for the jetty. 370 of them in all. You know, Milford Haven's one of the only 2 ports in Western Europe that can handle supertankers. And at our jetty, well, we'll be able to handle 2 supertankers and 3 smaller ones all at the same time. It's around 1,000 ships a year eventually. At the same time, we started work on the 75 storage tanks. We laid down about 8.5 miles of road spread over it's something like 450 acres the site occupies at present. Then there's about 200 miles of piping, all got to be laid and welded together. And by the way, all these fuel and the water pipelines have got smaller pipes surrounding them through which we can pass steam to make sure there's an easy flow of liquids during cold weather. Then we've shifted about 60,000 tons of rock. We put in a couple of 100 miles of electric cabling. There's over 13 miles of it in the control room alone. So, what with one thing and another, there's quite a lot of activity going on around here.
The whole face of South Pembrokeshire is changing just now with the advent of new industry, new ideas. In fact, the whole pattern of life is changing. And of course, this industrialization means that public utilities like gas, electricity, telephones are being committed to major capital development programs, not just to cope with the needs of these new industries themselves, but to meet the demands of new residents who are moving into the area.
Council are determined to house all the people who will require it in the next 3 or 4 years in this locality.
Well, the council have decided that they're going to build approximately 1,500 council houses. Well, at the moment, we're having our difficulties with labour, and we cannot see how they can carry out this project of 1,500 council houses with the labour shortage there is in the area.
We needed a peak labour force of over 2,500. And although the contractors brought in a lot of their own men, we obviously had to recruit labour locally as well. And this did cause a labour shortage in the area, which affected housing projects and so on. In fact, for nearly 12 months after work started on the site, we had whole families living in this cottage, entirely surrounded by the refinery, while new homes were being built for them off the site at the company's expense. It got a bit difficult at times, what with the mud and no proper water supply and so on.
Well, water always is a problem. And when it decides to rain down here, there are no half measures about it. The skies just open up and all the construction boys are up to their necks in mud before you can turn round. Well, even so, they're still short of water because a refinery of this size needs a pretty big supply, around a couple of million gallons a day. Well, eventually we got our water from the river at Canaston Bridge. We had to pay about 3/4 of the cost of building a pumping station and laying a 16-mile pipeline across the site. So we put in a pipe with plenty of spare capacity while we were about it. And it caused a bit of comment. Digging trenches in front of ancient monuments like Carew Castle and sticking 24-inch pipes under miles of countryside. Ah, but once it's been a few months and grown over, I don't reckon you know where it's been. And it won't have affected the scenery at all.
Pembrokeshire is a county of unsurpassed and unspoilt beauty, and therefore the coming of the oil installations have of necessity some effect on the natural beauty of the county and on its reputation, its growing reputation as a tourist centre, because there is some evidence that people are now saying that they will not come to Pembrokeshire because it is being industrialised.
Personally, I think that tourism and industry just cannot go hand in hand. I think in the next 10 years that tourism in Pembrokeshire, in South Pembrokeshire, will be almost forgotten.
There's plenty of room here for industry as well as tourism, so I don't see they could make any difference at all to the tourist trade.
My great fear is this, that whilst these refineries look so beautiful at the moment and they're delightfully lit up at nights, what are they going to be like in 10 years' time?
I can't see we are going to be affected all that much. Farming will still go on like it always has. Well, there's still a lot of countryside left, and, well, I reckon it'll be a long time before they spoil the sort of scenery and coastline we've got down here. A very long time.
Refineries, of course, add nothing to the beauty of anything. They're very difficult to conceal, and I suppose within limits, the developers have done what they can to hide the refinery.
Of course, we had to meet a lot of planning requirements as far as the county planning and the National Parks Committee was concerned, but we've raised the skyline so the tank tops wouldn't break the skyline. We've planted nearly 3,000 trees, and as a matter of interest, we haven't cut down any trees. We've paid a lot of attention to the colour that tanks have been painted, to our fencing, and to all things which will go towards preserving the natural beauty of the countryside as much as we possibly can.
Well, there are a couple of chimneys sticking up, but they're not dirty North Country ones. I don't see that should spoil a person's holiday. It's lovely and quiet here.
It's a very quiet place. You have two entertainments. You have either go to bed and sleep or go out drinking. And either way, that's a dead loss, isn't it?
Yeah.
I will admit it is rather dead, but it's not a bad place. At times, it's a bit dead. There's not a lot of life here, you know.
But there's plenty to do in the evenings in Pembroke.
Well, I think I agree with them. It's a great place in the summer. It is. Wonderful.
Why?
I'd never leave here. Never.
I think it's fabulous.
there'll be many changes in Pembrokeshire. There'll be changes of attitude, changes of attitudes to all sorts of things. But change on the whole, you know, can be made good, providing it's done wisely and with sensitivity. And this is happening.
Oh, it is. I'm already feel that I'm a banker. I'm changing all sorts of currencies and that sort of thing. And I think I got one up on the bank here. Well, they close at 4 o'clock. We open. We're open until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. They take all my change.
Trade has undoubtedly been affected beneficially.
Well, it's morning, noon, and night. Everything's changed. I have to start breakfast at an earthly hour. We never get to bed.
We've all got to change our ideas now, you see. I mean, after all, we just plodded along and enjoyed ourselves, sort of thing. Well, now we want these things to come, so we've got to move with the times.
I mean, you've got to have better roads than what you've got, but we can't see at the moment how they can improve that.
Well, the roads will definitely have to be improved. Definitely. It does mean that we've got much more work to face up to, heavier traffic, using roads which were never really intended to carry that sort of vehicle. It needs special escort for the very heavy stuff. And although we've had major improvements on the roads by the local authorities, much more needs doing.
Anyone working on a project of this sort is faced with all kinds of problems. But with a bit of imagination, a lot of hard work, and a bit of luck, you can sort most of them out. Of course, we've come up against our share of snags, but when you come to think about it, to have built a refinery of this size, from the grassroots to this stage in only 17 months, is really a pretty staggering achievement. Eventually, we'll be processing something like 3.5 million gallons of crude oil every day. And when we're fully on stream, the tankers will be coming in thick and fast. Even the super tankers, that's the 80, 100,000 tonners, can only carry enough crude to keep us going for a week. But right now we're waiting for the first shipment so that we can get started up. There's 250,000 barrels of crude on its way to us from Bahrain on board the Regent Liverpool. She's one of the new tankers we've built to help feed this refinery. The hose rigs have been tested, pumps have been checked, berthing crews are ready. This is the day we've all been waiting for. It's the day Pembroke Refinery comes to life. A bit different from a tanker, isn't she? It's the Cunarder Mauritania, dressed overall, escorted by 6 tugs, and the largest passenger liner ever to enter the haven. For her master, Captain John Treasure Jones, this must be a proud moment, for he is a local man, born in Haverfordwest, and now he berths his specially chartered ship at the Regent jetty to disembark his 300 distinguished passengers, all invited to witness the opening of Pembrokeshire's latest and most important enterprise. The refinery is complete. The multi-million-pound project is on stream, right on schedule, and the guests are assembling to witness the official opening ceremony, to be performed by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Flags are everywhere, and the cheers ring out as the royal standard is unfurled at the refinery gates. Her Majesty is accompanied by the Lord Lieutenant of Pembrokeshire, the Honourable R.H. Phillips, who presents first Sir Edward Beetham, Chairman of Texaco UK Limited, and Lady Beetham. A few informal words, and then the Chairman and Chief Executive of Texaco Incorporated, Mr. Augustus Long, is presented, followed by Mr. J.B. Christian, Chairman and Managing Director of the Regent Refining Company, and Mrs. Christian. Then Mr. C.C. Dunn, Managing Director of Regent Oil Company Limited, and Mrs. Dunn. After the presentations, a tour around the very heart of the refinery, an area which not only looks very impressive, but which also provides a good many excellent vantage points for spectators too. So to the opening ceremony itself.
Your Majesty, ever since it became known that Your Majesty had graciously consented to open this new refinery, everybody connected with the project has been eagerly awaiting this day, and we welcome you very, very sincerely to the Regent Refining Company. We are deeply sensitive of the great honor which you have done us in coming so far to visit us, and this is a day which will always be remembered and will be a red-letter day in the history of our group.
In so many walks of life, oil has now become almost indispensable. It is, therefore, with my very best wishes to all who may work here, either now or in the future, that I declare this Regent Refinery open.
Pembroke Refinery is officially in operation, and the rebirth of Pembrokeshire has begun. For centuries, sea and shipping have provided the backbone to this county's way of life. Now, the sea carries the tankers that bring lifeblood to the newborn Pembrokeshire.